Welcome to Cheese in Depth. I'm Michael Landis, and today is part 2 of our Basil Hayden adventure. And today we really get a chance to look at a little bit more of a different direction that they've taken, and we look at rye. So again, I want to welcome Adam Harris, the Senior Ambassador for Jim Beam, and I'm going to turn it over to Adam. Adam.
All right, well, thank you, Michael. It's nice to be back. How's everybody doing this week? You'll have to excuse me, the Derby was this weekend, and so naturally I got a little hoarse. And you're just going to have to deal with this version of me this week, but next week I'll be back in my fine dulcet timbre. Well, it is great to be back. I had a wonderful time last week starting to introduce Bourbon Heritage Month with you all, talk about the history of bourbon, talk about what makes bourbon bourbon, why we celebrate it, and of course focusing on Basil Hayden, why it's such a great whiskey and bourbon to enjoy at home or while you're out with cheese and other sort of celebratory and shareable things that you might be enjoying with friends and family, especially as we are spending more time with family and some friends during these days, and certainly heading into the holiday. But like Michael mentioned, I am going to tease a little bit of our rye today as you start to understand how we're starting to explore the whiskey world through the vision of Basil Hayden and what we offer with that bourbon, and as we've innovated into the rye category. So just a quick reminder for those of y'all that may not have made it last week, I'm going to run through the standards of identity. Like I mentioned, we are celebrating Bourbon Heritage Month all September long. And so it really harkens back to 1964 when we claimed bourbon as our native spirit. And so we celebrate it in September, as we will also celebrate Bourbon Fest, the third Saturday in September in Bardstown, Kentucky. It's going to look a little bit different this year, unfortunately, but we still are celebrating nationally. And so in 1964, we declared this to be our native spirit. And even though we've been making bourbon for over 2 centuries in the country, and at our distillery, the Jim Beam family, we've been making whiskey for 225 years this year. So we're celebrating a big anniversary ourselves. But we needed to define what made bourbon bourbon. If we were going to claim it, we didn't want it just to be part of that large sort of miasmic definition of a grain distillate that spends some time aging. We want to be more specific in what makes bourbon so unique. So first and foremost, bourbon is an American product. And again, if this is review for y'all, apologies, but we'll run through it really quick. It's an American product made of no less than 51% corn, aged in a new unused charred oak container. It's distilled no higher than 160 proof, put into a barrel no higher than 125 proof, put into a bottle no lower than 80 proof, which is where we like to bottle our Basil Hayden across the family. And then last but not least, bourbon is a authentic product, meaning that we cannot add or subtract any flavors or colors to that spirit other than water before we put it into the barrel for maturing and for that aging process. If we want to add anything to it, say a flavor or another spirit to kind of change up the flavor, then we can do that after maturation. That's completely legal. All those rules are going to apply to the spirits that we're going to focus on this week, and that's going to be rye. So the only thing that changes is instead of being 51% corn, I guess you could probably assume that we would need to be 51% rye to be a rye, correct? So if you're playing by those rules, you're making bourbon and you're also making rye. So congratulations. We're going to dive into Basil Hayden's, and today I'm going to talk to you all a little bit about our rye, which was the first limited expression we ever made. Kind of came and went a few years ago. It was very popular and kind of went poof off the shelf. It was so popular. And then we did our second limited time offering, which was going to be our dark rye, or is our dark rye. And it was so popular that we decided to keep it around. So one of these, unless you've been hoarding a bottle like I have, you might not be able to taste along, but the dark rye, hopefully you picked up a bottle from your favorite store there, wherever you are, and we'll be able to taste this awesome rye with me if you're not able to taste both these awesome ryes with me. So again, Basil Hayden was a real man. He moved to Kentucky when it was still the Virginia Commonwealth. He did what a lot of folks do. He farmed and made whiskey and raised a family. And generationally, his family came up and made whiskey and eventually had a bourbon called Old Granddad. And we purchased Old Granddad as being back in the late 80s. And with that, we were able to acquire a very unique mash bill for us, which is a high rye mash bill. And so Basil Hayden over the last 25 plus years has really been known as this very approachable, very sippable bourbon, but has had a high rye. And that rye has always given that whiskey a certain elegance and spice that people have gravitated towards. And so as we started to think about how can we start to grow Basil Hayden grow it in a way that we could start to have fun with it and see like what other flavors we could bring to the party, we decided to lean into that rye aspect of the whiskey. And so taking cues from that high rye bourbon, we said, well, let's just try straight rye whiskey. And that's where we come with this bourbon, this whiskey right here. A lot of bourbon during Bourbon Heritage Month, so talking about rye is a little bit of a change, but it's a welcome change. Rye is always going to be a little bit spicy. That's what the grain is going to bring to the table here. When you think about it, you guys are foodies, you drink wine, traditionally you get those sort of pairings here. You know, you probably get a little rye crackers from time to time to have your cheese, your salumi on, or your charcuterie. And so think about the spiciness of that rye. And it's also a dry and light grain. So as opposed to corn, which is going to be sweet and nutty and big full bodied, that rye is going to be just spicy and elegant. And well, depending on how you treat it or age it or bottle it, it can also be big and bold. But with Basil Hayden being that approachable whiskey, whether that's a bourbon or a rye, we're going to lean into some of those more complex but light-bodied, full-flavored, and elegant notes that I credit Basil Hayden with having, regardless of what expression we're tasting. So going back to this rye really quick, this is using a Kentucky-style rye mash bill. And I've used that word a couple of times, mash bill. That is just the percentage of grain that you're going to use to make a beer, which you're then going to distill into the whiskey that will go into the barrel and become either rye or bourbon. So our mash bill here is going to be a majority of rye with some corn, and then also a little bit of malted barley. We don't do a high rye because we like to have that corn component there, which is going to allow that rye spice, which you do get in all of our rye, to piggyback to a very long and pleasant finish. It kind of negates the dry and light aspect of rye by giving it that bottom and that body that really helps to deliver the spice flavor and to deliver that nice mouth-watering finish that we like for our whiskeys to have from the James B. Beam Distilling Company, and especially our small batch bourbons. We did mention where we come from, which is the James B. Beam Distilling Company. As part of the small batch collection there, we were founded by Booker No, our 6th generation master distiller. As far as small batch goes, he was the innovator in that category. We were founded back in 1795. So Booker was the innovator on the small batch category, and that is our flagship building at our distillery in Claremont, Kentucky, where we've been since Prohibition. So we actually purchased this property before Prohibition, and we started making whiskey in earnest and began the real foundation of what was the Jim Beam business with our 4th generation Jim Beam. And then again, skip into the 2 generations afterwards, which was Booker No, the gentleman who brings us here. And Booker No loved his warehouses. You can see these warehouses here, and the genesis of small batch bourbon was really him finding special honey holes in these warehouses. We can go to the barrels inside these warehouses as he explored the ricks and explored the interiors and just finding a whiskey that was kind of like in the Goldilocks' porridge of the warehouse, not too tall where it's too hot, not too low where it's a little cooler and the whiskey doesn't age as fast, and then never on the sides, which also could be a little bit more aggressively aged. So he liked it in the very middle of the warehouse, which is where we're going to find not just Basil Hayden, but certainly Booker's, the namesake of the man who found the whiskey, Knob Creek, one of my favorites, and of course Baker's bourbon as well. So getting back to the rye, I encourage you, or if you're just having whatever whiskey you have closest to you, I always encourage everybody to take a look at the color first. You know, this is 80 proof. It's got some extra age to it, of course, but it's not the darkest of whiskeys. You know, the darkness of whiskey is going to change with time, meaning exposure to the barrel and interaction with the barrel wood and the oak and the char, and then, or the red line of the char, and then it can also be an indicator of proof, how much water has or hasn't been added. And so since this is an 80 proof whiskey, we've added quite a bit of water from its barrel strength, which is going to bring that color down to this wonderful light honey. And it really is just a very pretty color. It is honey all the way through. I said the bourbon last week was a little bit of a dark straw or golden raisin, and I think that's pretty spot on. And I think that light honey is just, if you made a honey syrup, this is the color it would be. It's fantastic. Now, when we get into the nose, you want to hold the glass under your nose, and whether you're using a Glencairn or whether you're using other type of tulip glass or just a rocks glass or some sort of stem glass. I'm using a little sherry copita here. And I like to set my nose over the glass, not in the glass. I'm not trying to take a drink through my nose, but over the glass, part my lips, which is very important, and breathe in. And from here, I'm able to start getting the aroma of the whiskey. And because we're talking about rye, what I'm going to get is a lot of grassy and floral notes. I'm going to catch some of that rye spice, which is, you know, mandatory when you're drinking a rye, or certainly hoped for when you're drinking a rye. And then I get a little bit of the barrel notes, some of the vanilla and caramel in the very background. And now, when I give it a taste, we learned the Kentucky Chew last week. It's where you take a little sip, hold it on your tongue for a second, and begin to move it around your mouth, literally by chewing on your whiskey. And then you're going to smack your lips together when you swallow it down. The chewing is going to coat your mouth to appreciate the full flavor. And then when you smack your lips, that's going to help you appreciate the finish. You'll be able to see if this is a lingering finish, if it's a light-bodied finish, or if it's just very, very long and mouth-watering. So let's go ahead and taste a little bit of this Basil Hayden rye. And I'm excited to try this because I haven't cracked this bottle in some time. So it'll be fun to have this again, almost anew, because it's been a little bit. So cheers to y'all. Enjoy this Basil Hayden rye. Now, for me, I'm very excited to try this whiskey with cheese because one of the tasting notes that I pick up here is black pepper, and there's this biscuity quality to the flavor as well. And I almost feel like it's kind of my grandma's biscuits with some black pepper in them. And I think that those flavors of that particular whiskey are going to go well with any of the cheese. I believe we're going to try the aged Gouda first. I'm not gonna speak for the cheese, but going together, I think that black pepper biscuit and cheese, throw an egg and some bacon in there. Well, we got bacon, so we can kind of double that up. But throw an egg on there and you got a heck of a sandwich in your mouth. So anyway, I'm going to pass it back to Michael and Marieke. And if you guys want to take us through this cheese, I'd love to drink a little whiskey with you and taste this cheese too.
All right.
Hey guys.
Welcome. So it's very nice for you to be able to join us in that lovely sunny day in Wisconsin. So let's hear a little bit about your Goudas and of course the aged Gouda that we're going to taste today.
Well, happy Thursday. So this has been a great introduction. Thank you so much. And I cannot agree more that this would fit a perfect match with some Farmstead award-winning Gouda from Wisconsin. And to be a little bit more clear about the Marieke Gouda. So here I have with me is
Laurie Baierl. Hello.
She's my partner in crime. Laurie makes sure, so while we here produce the Gouda, Laurie makes sure that everybody has a chance to try the Marieke Gouda and goes out there and rolls out the wheels. So right now you will see us here on one of the rare sunny days here in Wisconsin. I always say it's 9 months of snow, so I'm very glad, and that's why I wanted to sit here. I hope everybody can see me very well, but I'm very happy we have some sun to try it. It's always good to have your cheese, and I hope most of you guys did it, have your cheese on room temperature. So we had to speed the process up, and so that's why, again, we're sitting outside, but we have some wonderful cheese here right in the room temperature. Sometimes people wonder how long does Gouda stays good? I said, well, we invented cheese to make sure that the milk stays good. So cheese does not really go bad. So if you ever have a piece of cheese, and that counts about any cheese, and you see some mold on it, just wipe it away or cut it away. But cheese actually is invented to preserve milk, and it will stay for quite a while. But it shouldn't. You shouldn't have the cheese so long in your refrigerator because you should enjoy it. So I think we will start with one of our cheeses.
The aged Gouda.
The aged Gouda. So
Yeah.
right in front of you, you will have the aged Gouda. One of the things that is so fun about Gouda is that you can try it on different age categories. So the aged Gouda was young at some point, and then it would have like a creamy, young flavor to it. And that is always very well received by a younger public. The aged Gouda, though, in our case, so we get the milk from our cows because we are a farmstead creamery. So when the cows get milk, that milk goes straight through a pipeline into our cheese factory. And then we make it into Gouda. Gouda compared to Colby or cheddar it's a water wash curd. So we drain some of the whey and then we wash the curd in water. Then we pump the curd into a drain table, and that's where we cut blocks out of it, and then it goes in round molds. After 2 hours of pressing, it has this round wheel shape, and then it goes into our aging room. So then it becomes, after 60 days, it's our young, creamy cheese, and as it ages, it gets a little bit more complex flavor, and that's how we get to our aged Gouda. So
Right. So today we're gonna pair the bourbon with our aged Gouda, and this one is actually 9 to 12 months aged. You'll find that Goudas pair really well with bourbons, and the older the Gouda, the better the combination and the blending of the flavors. So this one's going to be very nutty, and it should have flavor crystals in it, which is my favorite part about a cheese. What else can you say about the aged Gouda?
and you let it linger a little bit more on your tongue. And I like to flush it a little bit with bourbon in my mouth and to get the combination out of it. In the beginning, because we were so new to making cheese, we actually did not know what the white spots in the cheese, the white crystallization in it was. And we put the cheese on hold, and we sent the cheese to our lab and said, I think our cheese is going bad. And they just laughed, and said, it's a good sign. And I really love those little crystallization in the cheese. It's a good sign. So yeah, I sometimes play with it too a little bit. That's what judges will do to see how consistency is in the cheese and warm it up a little bit and to get the fullest flavor. So cheers, or
They go really well together.
pros as we would say in Holland. So
There you go.
So
I think it's a fun
So-
fact that you brought up about sorry, Michael, just the cheese kind of as it ages, flavors blend together a little bit more. And that's exactly how bourbon and whiskey and rye works. In the way that as the barrel takes big breaths in the summertime and exhales those breaths in the wintertime, those flavors meld. So we're always trying to strike the perfect balance for whatever whiskey we're going to make or age. We're always trying to strike the balance of that grain flavor with the barrel flavors. And those barrel flavors are going to be your vanillas and caramels and fruit notes, things like that. And then you're going to get the grain forward flavor coming from the distillate. So it's always a balance, which I think is so nice to be able to draw those parallels between good products, between things that are worth taking time with, And I think that's one of the great narratives that runs through both whiskey and cheese.
And if I think about it, well, I saw those impressive whiskey barrels, and we aged our cheese on wooden shelves, and there's been some discussion points about it, but it has been done for ages, and it's a very safe process. I always think with the right protocols in place, wood is a natural thing. I actually have a funny story about that, because when we put our curd in a round mold, in the earlier days, they would put it in those round wooden molds. And when the Dutch would go to war, they would put those wooden cheese molds on their hats as a helmet, and they would use that during the war. I'm not sure how bulletproof they are, but there were a lot of, that's still a very high survival rate. But a lot of good things did start with wood, if you think about it.
That's great.
So whenever I'm teaching a pairing, I always get asked the question, do you drink first? Do you eat the cheese first? Do you eat, which way does it go? And on this particular direction, I think that having that reminiscence of the bourbon in your mouth and then tasting the cheese is a really nice experience, because you still get the lingering of all of the flavors, and then adding in the cheese, it really kind of brings out more of the butter flavors. There's a little bit of maple coming out, and then in the background, you get all that nice sweet rye.
I agree. And I
totally agree with you, Michael.
I do the same thing as I mentioned last week. I just like to wash that down with the last little bit of the whiskey when I'm about to finish the cheese.
Well, I don't think that there's a hard, fast rule on this, because I've done both, and I like both ways. Taking the cheese and then getting a really good flavor of the cheese, and then sipping in just a little bit of bourbon, because you don't really need a lot, to really mesh these two together. And that's what I think is really nice, is that, you have this, a nice amount of bourbon, but you don't need 12 ounces of this, because a little bit goes a long way.
Yeah, even at 80 proof, just a little bit's all you need.
And sometimes you have those days that you want to come home and you want to have a little sip of that heaven. and some days you want to come home and you want to try the cheese first. So it depends on the day sometimes too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think that's why Basil Hayden is such a welcoming bourbon or rye, really. Why it's a welcoming whiskey, just because it's not an overpowering proof. It's 80 proof, so you can really enjoy it with foods that have maybe more subtle flavors, like some more nuanced cheese, like the Gouda we just enjoyed, and being able to nothing's going to overpower one another. You know, we talked about balance in the barrel, and now we have balance on the plate. I think that's really great for offering Basil Hayden during home entertainment, because you're not going to need to call your friends an Uber or a cab or whatever it is. You know that they can have a couple of nice 80 proof Basil Hayden whiskeys and enjoy their evening with a little good food, friends, fun, family.
I jumped ahead a little bit and tasted the smoked Gouda and also the bacon Gouda with regular rye. And I have to say that it doesn't matter which direction to go. All of them work really well with this rye Basil Hayden.
It does,
Smoke is
and
really, that's a special.
and it's probably because there is one basic ingredient, and that's the Gouda cows that we have here on the farm, and they produce a high quality of milk. So I always think that you can taste the freshness in the cheese, and then sometimes they think, and maybe it happened in the early days, I am not sure, but I do know that we do not put in flavors to blend up any defects in cheese. So our cheeses is a premium cheese, and then we try to sort out premium ingredients like our Marieke Gouda bacon.
I have a quick question. I thought I knew a lot about cheese, and I like Gouda, but you said Gouda cows. Is it called Gouda because it comes from Gouda cows? Okay, you had me fooled.
Of
You had me
course,
fooled.
of course.
They're all Gouda cows, but our herd is a mixed herd of cows that make up the Gouda cows. It's brown Swiss, Holsteins, red Holsteins. What am I missing?
And then there's a mixture of Montebello, Normandy. So every time a cow calves here on the farm, it's like a Christmas present. Not sure what you're opening up this time. We have the most funkiest, lively personalities in those little cute calves. And I encourage everybody to come and visit them and cuddle them. So their colors, their spots, their personality, everything is different. So one of my favorite is Loretta. And Loretta is quite the diva, so she cannot live with or without other cows. So it's kind of funny. She gets kind of irritated about other cows, but then again, don't leave me. So that's our Loretta. So.
Yes.
So dark rye here, I kind of gave you a little bit of the background on it. This is our first line extension for Basil Hayden. So you can find this wherever you might shop for your spirit selections, and you'll find our whiskeys and things. What we've done here is we've really started to innovate on some different blends. So whereas our bourbon is our high rye bourbon mash bill, the rye that we just tried together is a rye mash bill, straight rye mash bill. This is going to be a blend of straight rye whiskeys and a little surprise ingredient. And so what we start off with is going to be our Kentucky style rye that we make at our distillery in Claremont, Kentucky, obviously. And then this rye is going to give a lot of spice and a lot of baking spices as well, and a little bit of oomph to this rye whiskey here. What we're then going to do for the minority of the blend, the majority of it is that Kentucky rye. And then the minority of what we're going to put in there is going to be Canadian style rye. So we have a sister distillery through the Beam Suntory company. We have a sister distillery up in Canada, in Alberta, and they make amazing rye whiskey. And the Canadian rye is going to bring a little bit more fruit to the party. And so we've got spicy notes, we got fruity notes, and then we're going to let it all come together with the addition of some California port wine. And this is actually, they've been making this port long enough in California to where when they decided you couldn't make, or when they declared that you couldn't make port anywhere but Portugal, this company was old enough to be grandfathered in. So we add that port to the whiskey, and you see there in the glass that it has that wonderful deep ruby color, right? And it just has that nice luscious redness, rubiness in the color. And then when we go ahead and give it a nose, the port just sings right off the top. But when you dig in a little bit deeper with a couple of extra inhalations, that's when you start to pick up those spicy notes from the Kentucky rye, and even kind of as serving as a bridge is going to be the fruity notes of the Canadian rye. And when you give this a taste to get an 80 proof, we always want to be welcoming everyone and be an easy whiskey to get to know. I like to say and often say, it's good, really good. I often say, and I like to say that when we go from the nosing the whiskey to tasting the whiskey, I like to say, let's see if the flavor delivers what the aroma promises. And I think that this whiskey here, this rye, has one of those, it really accomplishes that mission, because you get that poured up front both times, but then you get these waves of the individual whiskeys, but not in such an extreme way that they only taste like themselves. You can taste what the Kentucky portion is. You can taste what the Canadian contribution is, but it all makes this one great finished blended product. And I think that this is going to be a lot of fun to try with all these cheeses. And yeah, no, it's fun to kind of reintroduce yourself to old friends that you haven't tasted in a while. So this is like the rye. I haven't had the dark rye in maybe about a month's time. So it's fun to get reacquainted, and with new friends too. So I'll pass it back over. I hope you guys enjoy it. Wow.
You know, just the aroma on this, you can just really tell there's just so much of that maltiness that comes across, that richness, flavors on here. Kerry asked a quick question. He wanted to know whether or not, what the difference between the golden Gouda and the aged Gouda.
Between the golden and the aged Gouda, what happened is we're using some Parmesan cultures for our golden. So I always call it, it's a match made in heaven. So it's the best of two worlds that we try to combine together. So it has much more complexity, it has more depthness to it at a younger age. So normally, if you want to have a little bit more complexity to the cheese, you want to age it longer, where some more moisture will be drawn out of the cheese. We kind of were able to get the same flavor profile, yet with a little bit more smoother flavor to it.
Yeah, so our golden Gouda is aged, it's 6 to 9 months, but it is definitely going to taste like it's a lot older. And you're going to find that it's already developing those flavor crystals that we talked about for the 9 to 12 month Gouda. It's quickly becoming one of our more popular cheeses. Because it is a plain cheese and doesn't have flavor, again, it pairs well with anything.
And I still think it's going to be someday the World Cheese Championship. So.
I was getting to know you guys through your literature, and I noticed in your list of cheeses that you make, you have a black mustard. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Actually, that's one of my favorite, okay? The black pepper mix is wonderful. It's one of my first originals. So when I started making cheese, it was just me. And then Martha came along, and Martha wanted to join the team. I'm like, Martha, I'm not sure why you asking me for a job, because I'm only gonna make a little bit of cheese. Little did I know that cheese making was a lot of work, so I had no idea. But Martha kept asking me 3 times, and I finally said, okay, you're hired. I have no idea what you're gonna do, but come and join me. So it was me and Martha. And one doing, because she washed the curd, that was like my coffee moment always when we were washing the curd. And I was looking through this list that I got from Holland and all these different flavors, and I couldn't make a choice. I mean, the world is limitless. There is no limits to this, right? So I'm like, it will just sort it out itself, all those different flavors. So I picked that one, and before I know, I had almost the whole list of flavors, including the black pepper mix, and it's wonderful. So all the flavors, almost all the flavors took off. I only eliminated 3 flavors, but the black pepper mix is one of my favorites. It pairs very well, excuse my language, with beer. but it does wonderful with bourbon too. So maybe I'm just limited in that one that I only tried it with beer. So I would encourage people to try it with bourbon too. So
It's
especially in
okay. I
beer.
like beer too. It's all right.
I'm sorry. So, but the beer
No.
pepper mix is really good. So come visit me. I could send you some sample though. I should do that to make up this comment.
We can make an exchange. I'll send you a little olive oil.
Oh yes, okay, deal.
Yeah.
So the Bacon Gouda is definitely a partnership of two award-winning companies, and it's basically our plain Gouda. So the aged Gouda that you tried is our base formula recipe for the cheese. And then we just flavor our cheeses with natural ingredients. We never add anything artificial to the cheeses. You'll find that the bacon, the couple of cool things about this cheese is we use a no nitrate bacon. So the bacon is cured with fruit juices and citrus cure, which is something, you know, that some customers are looking for, and it doesn't take away from the taste of the bacon. The other thing you'll notice with our Bacon Gouda is there's a ton of bacon with it because everything is better with bacon. And besides Gouda cheese, bacon is one of Marieka's favorite foods.
Well, and who doesn't want? If you have a flavored cheese, you want to try the flavor, right? It irritates the heck out of me when I try a certain flavor and I can not even try the flavor in it. So because it's so shattered through the product. So we wanted to make sure that we had enough bacon in it. Matter of fact, we actually had to reduce the bacon that we added to it. So because, well, yeah, we really had to reduce it because it was almost like the curd couldn't knit together because we had so much bacon in it. So the bacon is in a partnership with a 4-year-old generation butcher here in town. They are a multi-award-winning one. Small batches, very handcrafted, very old recipes that they're still using from their great-great-grandfather. And when we want to add bacon Gouda, when we make bacon Gouda, Lindsay goes and she bakes 80 pounds of bacon and then she brings it and then we add it to the cheese. And I think it's a perfect match because now you don't have to fry a bacon. We already did it, or actually Lindsay did it. And then you can put it on your hamburger. You can put it in your mac and cheese. What's your favorite application?
Grilled cheese sandwich.
Grilled cheese sandwich. So,
Or with whiskey.
apparently, yeah, we have a new favorite there. So it tastes very wonderful. Again, use it on room temperature. While I'm sitting in the sun, I get reminded again how good it is when it's a little bit warmer.
I think if we went to a grocery store together, my cart might look exactly like y'all's cart.
Yeah. So you had mentioned
Whiskey, beer, cheese, bacon. There we go.
Yep.
Because no good story ever started with salad, right?
That's great. That's right. That's right.
So the next cheese would be our smoked Gouda. Again, everything is natural, natural ingredients on our Gouda, so that's very important to us. And our smoked Gouda actually gets smoked naturally. So when we make, it's one basic recipe. Every Gouda that we make comes from one basic recipe. And then we age it or we add flavors to it. Right before we add it to the drain table, we add our curds to it. So when the curds get added and we pump it to the drain table, and that's where the first pressing happens. With the smoked Gouda, what happens is everything stays the same until it comes into our aging room. So after it came out of our brine for 60 hours, for 2.5 hours, it goes into our aging room, and that's where we do not start putting on a coating because normally the next step would be to brush on a breathable coating for our Gouda when it goes into aging. No, now we put it in vacuum bags. We put it in bags, we put it in boxes, and we load it up and we bring it to the smoker where it's gonna have a natural hickory cold smoke for a day. So we bring it on Tuesday, we pick it up on Thursday, and they're doing some magic with it on Wednesday. And then when it comes back into our aging facility, then we adding our breathable coating to it and we let it continue to age. It's kind of funny because it's a learning curve for us too. as we started doing this, when we were sampling the cheese at a very young age, we couldn't smell any smoke. So sometimes when you have a smoked product and you cannot try it yet, leave it alone for a little bit. The smoke might still need to go through the cheese. So as it transports through the cheese, it needs a time. Just like we have to drive from A to B, we need time to do that. The smoke has time that it goes into the cheese too. So it's kind of funny how that smoke still lingers in the cheese. Was in the top 20 of the World Cheese Competition. It made it the 5th place, and I think I mentioned that before, but I'm very proud of that. It was placed 5th at the World Cheese Competition a couple of years ago.
You know, both of them work absolutely fabulous with this. Just so rich of all the flavors. You really pick out the flavor. I think the smoky, the smoked Gouda is my favorite at this moment because I'm really picking up a little bit of that meatiness. And Adam, as you said, how well this works with charcuterie, that smokiness kind of brings out a little bit of meatiness with the flavors here. That is, you know, a good friend of mine, Reginald Pearson, has been one of my bourbon cohorts, and he would love this at this moment because this is really such a nice balance of flavors, and one's not overpowering the other, but they bring each other to a better place.
So remember where I said that I think that a flavor should have the real flavor in it, and we have a lot of, like in the bacon, you need to know when you put a lot of flavors in it and when you don't, because sometimes certain flavors you only want to try young. Certain flavors you like it even when it's more aged. So like the black pepper mix is still very good when it's more aged, but when you add it in and you like it at the aged cheese, then the cheese flavor gets a little bit more dominant in this whole flavor profile. So then you need to know how to balance those flavors very well, because at a younger age you will not taste the cheese so well. Yet if you age it, the cheese starts to take over. So it's always it's an interesting combination where when you add a little bit enough flavor to it and when you don't.
So Adam, what's your favorite on here?
Wow, I really enjoyed the rye with the bacon Gouda. I thought that was very good. Again, because of what I pick up from the rye, the black pepper, the biscuit notes, things like that, and the bacon and cheese pairing there. I think that the dark rye actually was the champion of all the pairings. I thought that it went well with all 3 cheeses. And I think that, you know, for wine drinkers that tune in to see what you're doing, and for folks that usually drink some sort of grape product or aged grapes, fermented grapes, with their cheeses and charcuterie, I think that this is a really great way to introduce whiskey into the situation. So I'm as much as I enjoyed the singular pairing of the rye, just the straight rye with the bacon, I enjoyed all 3 with the dark rye. How about yourself?
It was very good. It was very well, wonderful pairing. I will for sure buy the Basil Hayden more often. It's going to be an unmissable bottle of alcohol in my alcohol selection. I promise you that, because I really enjoyed it. So it was a great pairing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you sincerely. It's been great talking with y'all. It's been fun.
All right. All right. Anything else you guys want to add?
I just want to say thank you again for. Go ahead, Marieke.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say thanks again for having me on and giving me this opportunity to talk about bourbon in a way that bourbon and rye in a way that might be really new to a lot of folks. So thank you for opening up your minds, your palates, and trying some whiskey and cheese with me. And thank you guys for bringing this awesome cheese and again, being so generous with sending some down. It's delicious, and I look forward to sharing it with my friends and family as well.
And thank you, Michael, for putting us together. And also all the people that logged in today, because if you don't take time, it's so much easier just to do your thing, but it's so fun to be open and try new things. I never expected the Basil Hayden to be so good as it is. So this is gonna be my new favorite. Thank you so much. So
Thank you.
I had so much fun. Again, thank you, Michael.
You're very welcome. You know, it's always nice to try something new. I've been enjoying Basil Hayden's for a very long time, many years when they first came out in the small batch bourbon collection back in was it late or mid 90s. But I had missed the evolution of all the changes of them getting the aging and getting the Caribbean and all that. So this has been quite an education for myself as well. Really enjoying it. So next week, we step up to some blended versions of Basil Hayden. So that'll be a lot of fun. And I want to remind everybody also that Marieke and I will be coming up on our own show October 16th, I believe, is a Friday. And we'll come up with some really fun cheeses for that event as well. And I'm really looking forward to it. Maybe we can throw a little Basil Hayden's in there.
Why not?
That would be fun.
Absolutely. Join us for happy hour.
Yeah, exactly. That's what the Friday's all about. All right. Thanks again, Adam, for coming out and playing. I'll see you next week. Marieke,
Yes,
have
sir.
a great vacation, and we'll see you in October. All right.
Take care,
See
everybody.
y'all.
Thanks.
All right, guys. Bye-bye.